So guys, I'm just going to take up the Unit 1A5 quiz. I'm using a different format than usual, so if there's a little hiccup here, bear with me. But we should be okay. I'm going to try to write directly on the screen here. So when you're dealing with integers, positives and negatives, I like to think of addition and subtraction questions. Before I do them, I like to approach the double sign. If you see two signs there, I kind of messed it up. If you see a plus and a minus, what you want to do is when you have a positive, a negative, a negative, a positive, what you want to do is replace that with a single negative. Okay, so it's the same as multiplication. If you had something like plus 3 times -2, you can end up with 6, and then your sign will be negative. Well, if you think of this, if you have plus minus 2, if you have two signs together, like minus 13, but here, but whatever it is, for positive and negative, what you're really doing is plus 1 times negative. Okay, and then you're going to add that to whatever's over here. So here you have a plus and a minus, you have plus minus 13. Okay, so back to this one here, you would go plus 1 times minus 2 is 2, negative. And here you have plus minus, it's going to be a negative. So you have 12 minus 18, I think. I scroll it out, and then you get minus 6. With multiplication and division questions, what I tend to do is I get the number value, and then I get the sign. So 8 times 9 is 72. One negative makes it negative. Here you have two negatives. You're going to divide, and then you'll have two negatives plus positive. So, oh, that worked. And then over here, you can have an addition question or subtraction question thing, and you have minus 2 minus minus. So that'll be plus 4. And then you go from there to get plus 2. Here you have no bracket, but it's the same thing. Okay, so just another way to write it. I think this is preferred with the bracket, but you can see this. You might have signs side by side by side. Okay, that's not perfect, but if you do see that, you're going to have to deal with those two signs, and you get minus 8 minus 11, and then minus 19 from there. When you see this sort of thing here, this is a little confusing. You just got to be careful. Here we don't have brackets. Here we have some brackets, and you might ask yourself, what am I doing here? This is an addition question, essentially. And I'm just going to clean this up, rid of the brackets. I have minus 6, so minus 6 stays the same. Then subtract 3, and then it's minus 7, which is then plus 7. Then you have minus 6, minus 3, plus 7. I just think in this situation, just you get confused with negatives and positives. Negative 6 out, it goes down 3, you're down to minus 9. It goes up 7, and you're up to minus 2. So that's that question there. If you, the order doesn't really matter. If you'd taken care of this first and got plus 4 and then subtracted 6 from that, you would have got the same. Moving on to this question here, different than this one. They look similar, right? But because they're brackets touching each other, bracket after bracket after bracket, that means multiplication. So just some things you're going to have to get used to. I don't know if you've seen that format before, but the difference, subtle difference between this question and the other question is when you have brackets like that with no signs between them, what you're doing is you're multiplying. So I can see how some people might think that this is minus 6. Well, if you can see that it's 6, minus 6 times minus 7, but minus 6 times minus 7 looks like this. Okay, so negative 6 times negative 7 is that. Okay, this is an addition question or subtraction question. Okay, let's get used to that. So here you have no signs between the brackets, so it's just a multiplication question. Multiply across 5 times 3. It's your number. Negative times a negative is a negative. Okay, so you have negative 30 for that question. Here it's division. Same the top and the bottom, so you can think of them as a fraction, or leave them as is, and say 7 times 9 is 63. 2 negatives is a positive. 3 times 7 is, again, let me go back here because I just want to make sure. Let's go back. Yep. So keep scrolling over stuff here. Oh, give me one more second here. I'll do it one more try. Yeah, there we go. So here's minus 7 times minus 9. All right, it is going to be plus 63. And then on the bottom, you have minus 3 times minus 7, which is going to get you plus 21. 63 divided by 21, you get your answer of 3. Here, BEDMAS, remember bracket first. Okay, so the order of operations matter, right? So brackets, exponents, division, multiplication are equal, and then addition and subtraction are also equal. But here you look at the bracket, Minus 5 times 2 is going to get you minus 10. You have minus 11 plus minus 10. Okay, so clean up the bracket to get minus 10, and you're adding that to minus 11. So minus 10, minus 11 plus minus 10 is going to be minus 11. Get rid of those double signs and replace it with a negative. So minus 11 minus 10 minus 21. The last couple questions, if I can get them. Here we go. That one we just did. Let me just scroll up here. There we go. And I can do that. There we go. Yep, so we did this one good. Again, bracket in here, and then it's a bracket in the bracket. So when you have a square bracket and then a round bracket, or sometimes you can just have a series of square brackets or a series of round brackets, what you're going to do is start on the inside bracket of the bracket. The square bracket, so looking at that, you have a bracket, and then you have a division, and the bracket takes precedence, and then within the bracket, you have another bracket. So that takes precedence. So let me just work this out. All right, so here I have that first bracket will give me 25. 22 plus 3 is 5, and then I'm going to divide that by 5. Okay, and that is divided by -1. So this slash line there means division. Okay. Also, fraction, same thing. Okay, so I go back and forth when you see your division sign or your slash sign or your fraction sign. They're all the same thing. They mean divide. So just another thing you might have to get used to with the format of the course. I don't think it's particular to the format of the course, really. I think it's more maybe just a different way to write things. You're going to see different ways to represent the same thing. For example, later on, you might see this, and it's not a decimal. What that is a raised point. And a lot of times I'll use that in my class, and you'll see it later on where that means multiplication. So if you're going to multiply, you might see numbers. You might see 25 times 7. You might see 25 bracket 7. You can even see this 25 with no bracket, 7 in the bracket. That's the same thing. You might see this, right? So you just got to get used to the different formats. And all of them are fine. So 22 plus 3 is 25. Divide that by 5, you get 5. And on the bottom, you have -1. So 5 over -1. You can think of that as a fraction. You can think of it as division. 5 divided by -1. Your number's 5. 2 negatives make sorry, 1 negative. Negative. Okay. The last question is talking about adding and subtracting negatives versus multiplying negatives. So let's go here. Addition of a negative, a positive negative versus multiplication of a positive negative. What I was looking for here was people use the word absolute, okay, or the term absolute value, which is nice. Okay. So what's happening when you have a positive and you add to it a negative? Here you have 5 and a -6. What happens is you add them and subtract them, and essentially the bigger of the two determines the sign. So if I have a 5 and a -6, because this guy's bigger, we're going to end up with a negative number. Okay, so if you explain it that way, you do a good job with the number sign also. Or number line, sorry, number line, talking about the number line. So like if you move more to the left or more to the right, you end up negative or negative and positive, right? So if you just think about that, if I have -9, what I'm doing is I'm adding to it plus 7. Again, this guy's bigger. My solution will have a negative answer. If this was a positive and this was a negative, this guy's bigger. He wins over here. Multiplication, no matter what, your answer is negative. So when you have a positive times a negative in multiplication, you're going to get the product, multiply the numbers together, and the sign, because there's one negative, will be a negative. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Work on these questions, guys. I think there was a handful of you that didn't get 4 out of 4, and you probably thought what I just said, or meant to say something, but just be careful on these questions that you read the question and answer the direct question. Not what you think the question is, not the general rules, but just take your time, maybe do a little dot notes and that thing, and then figure out what you're doing before you start writing, just to make sure that you cover the whole thing. Okay, take care. Good work.